Hey guys, welcome back to Manda's Mindset. I am here today with Alina, and Alina specializes in subconscious change and helps conscious leaders and creative souls transform self-sabotage, fear, and inner criticism into impact, success, and well-being. Part of what makes her work unique is a method called core transformation, which is also something I got to experience, and we're going to get into that a little bit as well. And core transformation is a gentle process that allows us to work with different parts of ourselves that are stuck in unwanted patterns of behavior and create profound inner change without having to struggle or rely on willpower. And honestly, guys, it is a really cool experience. And I am here today with Alina. Thank you so much for being here with me again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, your childhood, family dynamic, however deep you want to go with that, but kind of lay the foundation for us a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm actually originally from Russia, and we came to America when I was about 9 years old. So that was quite a big culture shift for me. Actually, it's a big reason why I continue to do the work that I do today is because the value system that I was brought up with in Russia was some American, I would say, households or European households were brought up in the same way. It's just really strict and focused on values of safety, security, certainty, education being the top priority, and being told that I needed to be really independent and following the traditional pathway of life, right? Like you go to school, you find your partner, you get married, you have children, and then you just work until some certain age. And maybe you retire. I don't know. I don't even remember anybody talking about retirement in Russia, but well, I guess when you're older, right? And you can't do it anymore. But yeah, so that was what I was brought up with. And I'm actively now rewiring and clearing a lot of these programs that have kept me in that cycle because, yeah, I mean, when we came to America, I was very focused on education still, and I ended up going into accounting. So that's kind of like it continued on to that traditional trajectory of life.
Okay. Now, that's interesting. So you had that same, because even here in America, that you go to school, you go to college, you get married, you have kids, you've got your job, you hopefully retire and you die. Like that, like literally that's basically it. Hopefully you get to enjoy retirement and then you die.
Uh-huh.
So that you had that same kind of, this is what happens and okay.
In my family anyway, I can't speak for everybody, but
Yeah.
that's the mindset that I was brought up with, the value system.
Okay. So you came here when you were 9. So do you remember schooling in Russia at all?
I do, because I went there through 3rd grade. So yeah, and I came here, I started 4th grade here. And I mean, I remember it being pretty strict again. Like here in America, we have these report cards, right? That I don't even remember when they go out, but once a quarter or something like that. There you have, I don't even know what the translation is, maybe like a grade book that you bring to school every day. And you basically get like daily grades. So then you bring your grade book home and then you can show your parents, like, this is what my progress was for the day, etc. And so I don't know if that's still how they do it, but I would say it was pretty strict and just a lot of comparison patterns to learning, how is the rest of your class doing? Or how did your sister do compared to you? And I just remember learning comparison from a very young age. Another thing that I am working on clearing and reprogramming.
Wow. That's interesting too, because now I don't know if you remember this, but these grade books, like, would kids look at each other's in school? I feel like that might be something as a young kid you'd show.
I don't remember. I really don't remember. But you would also kind of know, from what I remember anyway, you would be in class, right? And let's say the teacher asks you to do something in class in front of everybody, and then you get the grade right there. So I think people would know what grade you got, but I don't remember.
Okay, so it was outward too.
Sometimes. But then you would take tests and have homework and stuff like that, and that would all go in the grade book too. So, yeah.
Okay. And so then you came to the United States when you were 9. Now, siblings. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a sister, and she's still back in Russia. So she kind of, she chose a different life path, and so that's why she's still there.
Is she younger, older?
Yeah, she's older than me.
Okay, so then you came here when you were 9.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember early stages of when you first came here?
Yeah, I mean, it was really exciting because, my dad was actually here before me and my mom came, and he was just, sometimes he would send me little gifts, I don't know, a Barbie doll or something like that. He would send it to me, and I just remember it being so cool because it's not really something that was sold in the stores, or maybe it was, but we couldn't afford it. So I was like one of the only kids who had a Barbie, like a real Barbie, and I thought that was just amazing. But just being here in general, there was this sense of, I don't know, freedom. It's interesting, like just seeing how kids here were compared to how kids are there. I mean, kids play and, I don't know, just kind of enjoy this innocent life, right? And also at the same time, there were some key differences, like kids here were saying things like, my mom said I could be anybody I want to be when I grow up, or I can do anything I want to do. I was like, what is this? Because they would do little interviews at school where they would be like, and what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And people
just... You weren't used to that in Russia.
No.
Okay.
I feel like I was definitely encouraged to be somebody that was accepted in society, needed. So like a doctor or like an engineer or, lawyer, accountant, or somebody like that, like a respectable profession.
So it wasn't more so, what do you want to do? Or what do you want to be?
No.
So you want to be something that will help society, kind of, almost?
Exactly. Yeah. And something that will be safe and practical and will support you so that you can have the traditional life.
Yeah, like, so you can support the family with the picket fence. Okay.
Exactly.
So, and now is that kind of why I don't want to imply this, but is that why you chose accounting?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly, yeah. Well, because, I was going through school and I was fortunate enough to have my parents help me with the finances for school. And I was thinking about what the logical part of Alina is like, what will help me get a job out of college that is pretty much guaranteed and that will support me, right? So that I don't need to rely on anybody. And my parents, like, they don't need to keep supporting me, right? So accounting was just something that came up. Like, I was decent at math. I knew that it was going to be a career that was going to be needed everywhere, and I would pretty much be guaranteed a job. So that's what I decided to go do. And obviously my parents supported it, and that's exactly what happened. Well, except I graduated when the economy crashed in 2009, so that wasn't fantastic. And I needed to go to a city that I didn't think I would go live in. But it all worked out. So.
Okay. Now, I want to backtrack just a tad. So prior to coming to America, did you do like extracurriculars? Were you involved in anything over in Russia? Did they have that? I don't even know. Could you play sports? Like, genuinely? Okay.
I'm sure you could. I did piano. I remember that.
Okay.
My mom got me into that. I was pretty good. I think she almost got me into music school. And all of that, like the memories are just very vague. I don't know about the sports situation. I'm sure there are, just like the schools here, but I think there's a lot more emphasis on them here.
Yeah.
There's a lot more emphasis on get good grades so that you can actually get hired and have money and not have to go to the military. Because that's another thing is I don't know what it's like for women, if it's the same rules, but pretty much I believe if you're not going to go to college, you basically are required to go to the military for some certain amount of time. So it's actually, it would behoove you to study and all that kind of stuff.
Oh.
Unless you have some kind of physical issue that could prevent you from serving, stuff like that. But I don't know exactly, but that's what I heard. So there's an additional benefit to studying hard and getting good grades and being at the top of your class. And you can also actually get free education there for university. I don't know if it's any good, but that also depends heavily on your grades. So there's just a big emphasis on studying. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you came here when you were 9, and now you loved the freedom. You loved being able to think about what you wanted to be.
What I wanted to be, just in general, the attitude, the feelings were just a lot more laid back.
Okay.
I don't know. My parents, they actually brought over some textbooks because you can buy textbooks at the bookstores there. So they bought like 4th, 5th, and 6th grade math and like Russian and all this stuff with the intention that I would go to American school and then come home and we would also do Russian school too. And that didn't last very long.
Okay.
Because I was like, I want to go play with the kids. I will say the education system there was significantly further ahead. So in 4th grade, I was probably at 6th or 7th grade math already. And just in some points, it was a lot more advanced there. But of course, like my English skills were really terrible because I didn't know any English except hello, goodbye, how are you type of thing. So I was also in ESL a lot studying English for a couple of years, but I picked it up pretty quickly because I think when you're a child, you're just able to sponge that up, you know?
Okay. Now, I've obviously never had to learn English, but I've heard that it's one of the harder languages to learn. But you picked it up easily.
Apparently. I don't know. I kind of have a brain that learns by memorization. So, like, I never actually learned to read notes, but I would just learn where my fingers would go on the keys, and that's how I would learn the song. Oh. So I wouldn't be looking at the sheet to help me. I would just remember where it goes. So it's the same thing with language too. Is if I can just memorize how it sounds, then I can just say it. And then eventually, once you start speaking, obviously it's just a automatic habit, unconscious habit, right? But that's how I learned, is through repetition and just memorization.
Wow. Okay. So you get to America, and how was schooling? And you middle school, high school, how were your schooling years from what you remember? Did you get involved in extracurriculars here? Clubs?
Yeah. My mom tried to get me into some things before I kind of just was like, I don't want to do any of it. I did dance for a while. Like I did ballet, like classical ballet for a bit. I did, I don't know, you would call it cheerleading or tumbling, I guess, type of thing, but not as part of a team in school or whatever, just because it was fun. And then I like injured my ankle. I like flipped over the wrong way and fractured my growth plate on my foot. And that's my mom was like, you should probably stop. Okay, fine. So, yeah, I didn't really do much after that. You know, you're talking to a girl who grew up in a little town in Texas. I say little, I mean, it's a good size, but to me it was little. I wanted to go explore so bad. I wanted to go live in another city. I wanted to get back to Colorado because that's where we originally arrived when we came to America. I was obsessed with getting to Denver. So I had a big goal to be like, how can I get out of school as fast as possible so I could leave and go do these things? And so I graduated high school early.
You graduated high school?
Oh, yeah. Because I was like, I wanted to speed up this process. So I basically skipped my senior year. I went to night school where you could basically just get on the computer and take a bunch of quizzes about whatever the topic is. I had 1.5 PE credits that I still needed because I did swimming for a year. I did crossword puzzles that were basketball and baseball themed.
Okay. And that counted as PE credits?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
It was the easiest senior year ever. It was great.
So how old were you when you graduated high school?
17. I mean, not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was only a year early.
Okay.
You got like a little scholarship, you know, to go towards college, and that was nice.
Okay. And then you went to college. Did you go to college for accounting?
Yeah. got my master's degree because in Texas you needed to get a certain number of hours so that you could do the certified public accountant license. So I did the whole thing. So you're like, well, if you're going to go for accounting, might as well be a CPA.
Okay. And where did you go to college?
Texas Tech University in Lubbock. That's where I was growing up after we were in Colorado for only a year, and then we moved to Texas, to Lubbock. And that's where my dad still is, and he's teaching there and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Okay. So you went to Texas, and then now post-school, did you become a CPA right away?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, up until I decided to go into business for myself, I was very much... up until I started my own business, I was very much like a linear life path, right? Just like my parents taught me when I was a child, is you do this, then you do that, then you do this. As soon as I got out of high school, I went into college right away, got my bachelor's done in business administration, got into the accounting program for the master's so that I could then start studying for the exam for the CPA license. And the way that they have the master's program set up is like you do an internship during the program, which counts for credits. And usually what happens is you go to this internship, and during the internship, you get a job offer so that when you are about to walk, you already have a job on the graduation stage, which is great, right? Except not in 2008 when the economy crashed. However, there was plenty of connections that allowed me to still get a job. I thought I was going to move to Dallas. That's where I wanted to live, but the only place that I could get a job at that time was Houston. And I tried to apply to Denver, and it just wasn't, I guess it wasn't the right time because I wasn't getting any bites. So I needed to go to Houston.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to Houston and you started working at a firm over there?
Yeah. I worked for Deloitte, which is like one of the, I don't know, they call them Big Four in accounting. So like the Big Four accounting firms of the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy being a CPA?
I mean, yeah, to a degree, there's a lot you can learn, right? There's a lot of benefit to being a part of a big firm because, I mean, they pay for a lot of your training, people who are your age too, right? That's a benefit because you get to make some friends and have camaraderie and stuff like that. And you get to work on some pretty cool clients, depending on what department you're in. I was doing international tax for a while, which was kind of interesting. And then I kind of switched to the high net worth individual and company, which I enjoyed a lot more. There was a lot more personal element to it than like this giant corporation that just deals oil and gas, and is trying to open up operations in China or something. To me, the personal element has always been more interesting. So I enjoyed that. It was tough though. I mean, there's a reason why they have the kind of, it's pretty much common knowledge that if you go to a Big Four firm, you're going to be chewed up and spit out. And most people quit within the first 2 years because it's hard. Depending on what department you're into, because I was in tax and we have these things called busy seasons. So from about, February to April, and then again from like August to October, sometimes November, I would be working 65, 75 hours a week. So I would basically live at the accounting firm, which we know when you're in your early 20s, a lot more resilience. So.
Yep. Okay. Now, how long were you there for?
Right. I switched from international to that high net worth individual department, and I was in Houston for a couple of years. And then we went to this like training facility. It's called Deloitte University, where they I don't know, they have continuing education there, like connection opportunities. And I sat at this table, giant table for lunch. There was nobody else there. And this woman comes and sits next to me, like randomly. And she's, hey, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from Houston. I was like, where are you from? She's, I'm from Denver. I'm like, oh. I'm like, I wanted to live in Denver for a long time. And she's, what department are you? And I'm like, PCS. She's, I'm PCS. I was like, oh. I was like, are you guys looking for people? And she's, yeah. Just give me your resume and I'll get you to my manager and blah, blah, blah. And within a week, I had a offer to go to Denver.
Where did you meet this woman? What?
At the like their Deloitte University, like their little training facility. So basically that meeting over a weird lunch got me a trip to Denver.
Okay, so you go to Denver.
Yeah, so then I stayed 2 more years there and worked in that department. So that was a great leap, right? Being able to just transfer like that within the company I already was in. And then I had another manifestation thing happen because in Houston, actually, I was considering other jobs already. I think it was a happy hour, a company happy hour. This guy showed up to it that wasn't supposed to be there. He was like from a party next door. And he started asking me about my job, and he's like, do you enjoy your job? I was like, well, I'm kind of thinking about maybe switching. And he's like, you should have coffee with this guy I know who has his own firm in Houston. I'm like, okay. So I went and had coffee with that guy, and he like actually wanted to offer me a job. But then I was like, no, I think I want to go to Denver one day, and I don't want to commit because it sounds like you're trying to build something long term. I'm just telling you this because when I went to Denver and I started working at that same firm I was working at,
yep.
I got an email from my coffee guy from Houston like 2 years later, and he was like, are you still looking for a job? And I'm like, well, I'm in Denver now. And he's like, you should meet this guy I know that I met at a conference randomly. Here's his name. And I go and meet that guy, and he's, I'm actually looking for a person to help me run my firm. And he's explaining exactly what I've been like wanting to get into ever since college. Like I had this idea in my brain in college that I would want to work for a small firm where the person who's leading it could take me under their wing and teach me what they know, and then maybe I could take over the firm. And I don't know, just a much smaller, intimate environment, you know? And that just wasn't available when I was in college. The big firms were the ones that were kind of dominant. Anyway, so this guy's, yeah, here you go. Come talk to the people at my firm and see if you're a good fit. And then I had a job with him. And I basically got my dream job in accounting from that whole shuffle interaction.
Now, this dream job, was this one in Houston or was it in Denver?
No, in Denver.
Okay. And so do you take this job, correct?
Yeah.
And how long were you at that job?
About 4 years. So I was in accounting total for about 10 years doing a variety of tax stuff. And with that smaller firm that I took the job, he was a great entrepreneurial guy and really saw the value in his people. So he had a lot of different things that he was doing. He was building a payroll franchise. And so he was like, okay, I know that if I treat my people well, then they're going to basically take care of this firm, right? So he paid his people well, he gave incentives, he like gave good value, or not value, benefits, right? Like was always kind of available to be like, what do you need? How are you doing? Not just at work, but personally. Very great, like human person, right?
That's great. No, that's great.
And I'm really grateful for him for just seeing the potential that I didn't know I had. I was just like, I'm just going to do taxes because it's all I've ever done, right? I was just the tax preparer behind the curtain. Give me a bunch of paperwork and I'll sort it out. But he was like, what do you think about doing sales and marketing and, I don't know, helping develop the team and all this stuff? And so he encouraged me to go start doing all this stuff. So I learned a lot of new skills. I wasn't just doing taxes. I was also like networking a bunch and doing sales meetings, right? And signing new people on. I converted most of the firm to like new technology, and the owner guy, he was also like really futuristic too. So he was always asking the question of what is the future of accounting? How are we going to keep up with that? What can we do as a firm? So that kind of leads into the whole, he always wanted to create some kind of offering that would help accounting firms have more advisory services, because accountants are notorious for what's called compliance, which is, you know, oh yeah, I'll do your taxes or I'll do your books, right? So you can have your balance sheet and profit and loss statement every month. And that is what's been the bread and butter of a lot of accounting firms for a long time. But really the future of accounting is that, you know, a lot of that stuff is going to get automated by technology.
Yep.
And really what's left is the relationship piece of the accountants who actually build relationships with their clients and are having conversations that go beyond here's your piece of paper I filled out, right? Those are the firms that are going to survive. So that's why he was like, what can we create that would help not only us do this better, but also other firms? And he always had that question in his mind. I was like, yeah, I'm on board, obviously. I mean, I'm in my 20s and I plan on being in this career for a long time, so I want to be a part of this. At one point, he decided to sell the firm because he was focusing on other things. And at that time, it just wasn't a good fit for me to stay there. That's why I decided to, actually, I was like, hey, are you still thinking about creating that thing that you were talking about for the advisory services? And he's, yeah, we could do that now if you want. I'm like, okay. You'd have to quit your job, though, probably, because it would probably require a lot of time. I'm like, yeah, that probably would be correct. That was when my leap happened. I left the firm and I started that thing with him and some other people.
Okay. And how was this new thing?
You know, it was like drinking from a fire hose in a lot of ways, but also exciting again, right? Because I'm like uncovering these new skills that I didn't think I had. Because basically what I started doing was building this giant educational program for entrepreneurs on basics of business, right? So I'm sitting there like learning about professional e-learning, which I didn't know was a thing. I am creating graphics and animated videos and writing a bunch of content and recording my voice and putting together like learning about how people learn so that I can create this content in a way that's actually digestible and fun. And I don't know, there's a lot of interesting things about professional e-learning I didn't know existed. Like there's these programs where you can build little games and stuff, which I spent a lot of time doing. But I got a lot of positive feedback from folks who were really interested in this initiative. And so we got some good seed funding and stuff like that. And it was fun to go to conferences and talk about this with people. So it was just a lot. But I was working a ton because, as you know, when you have your own business, you can just kind of work all the time. And that was 2018. So not COVID yet, but like I was spending a lot of time just like on the computer trying to put this program together and went through burnout. There was just a lot that happened. I think, like now that I think about it, it seems like a really big initiation into this world of entrepreneurship, right? Because I got to learn what it was like to go from earning a pretty great salary, right, to earning nothing for a long time until we got the seed funding. And then the amounts that I did get paid were like minimal, but kept my lights on basically. So many lessons with learning how to deal with that big money change and just the big change of, hey, you used to do this thing, this career that you spent so much time and energy developing, right? I mean, just getting the CPA license alone that was a year and a half of studying every single day. Because only less than 50% of people, I think, pass on the first time or something like that. So it's not an easy exam, and you pay thousands of dollars to obtain it and get it and all this stuff. So it's an achievement, an accomplishment, and a lot of people don't just kind of let that go. So there's just a lot of things going on at that point of just my mind is, Alina, what are you doing? Why are we stopping this really safe, predictable path of life? You know? So there's probably a lot of that attributed to my burnout.
Okay. What would you say was like the biggest challenge you faced with that? Because that's a big transition. Even when you said having a steady salary to owning nothing, like that's a big.
It totally is. I mean, you just kind of have to keep going. I mean, I had savings, so it's not like I couldn't keep my lights on or pay my rent or something like that. I was okay, but just the whole aspect of that, being in that situation, you're like, oh God. Okay, well, I hired a coach, a life coach.
Okay.
Well, I worked with her for a year, so that was my first introduction to coaching, but I feel like she helped me tremendously. You know, I wasn't doing really, maybe a little bit, like I was always interested in self-development and mystical things and stuff like that, but I never got into it to the extent that I did when I started creating that company, because there was so much change that my brain was literally freaking out. So she really helped me in that initial stage of come to awareness of my thoughts and my feelings and like my ability to choose, come up with a bigger vision and goals and like work towards something and just have a process of dealing with obstacles instead of just feeling like I'm flailing through a tornado of craziness, you know?
Yeah. No.
It helped me a lot.
Okay. I think that's great. I talk about awareness a lot because we can't see what we can't see, you know, and whether it's a life coach, whatever type of coach you want to call it, like we're biased to our own lives. We're in it too much to see the outside. People say, step outside of yourself, be the observer, which you can to an extent, but only so much.
Sure. Well, right. And then, you know, after learning a lot of these things about our perception, like how our perception works through these filters in our mind that have a lot to do with our upbringing, it makes sense that I wasn't able to fully step into that observer at that time and see things from a clear standpoint. You know, it was heavily distorted, but it was good. All of it was good, right? So many lessons and such I was gonna say a gentle path, but it's not a gentle path. It was exactly what I needed to get to where I needed to be, you know, even though it wasn't always fun.
I like how you mentioned our perception is affected by our upbringing because it really is. And in so many, even in small little instances, you know, that people might not even realize, like you judging a way a person does a random thing could be based on something you've seen in your upbringing, you know?
You're not even aware of it. Absolutely.
So then from here, where would you go from after you're doing this?
Right. So that was in spring of 2020. I was determined to finish that program that I started creating, right? And finally did it. Okay. Finished it. And at that point, I was like, do I want to keep going with this business or not? I basically decided that it was time to move on. And it was already, you know, it was a crazy year already, right? Because COVID started just then. So we were already on lockdown. I was like, okay, I'm going to tell them that I'm not going to stay with the company. I did that. And then I was thinking, do I really want to go back to accounting? I mean, that was such a wild ride. You know, I learned so many new skills. I surprised myself. Like, I actually am pretty good at creating stuff and writing and doing marketing things. And I basically built a comprehensive program for entrepreneurship, like just now. At that time, I had already become aware of the online coaching world as well, which I didn't know existed. I'm like, oh, there's actually businesses on the internet where people are coaching others and making money, right? So, and of course, the people who first caught me were the people who buy all the ad space, right? So like Marie Forleo and James Whitmore and all these people that are super guru, 7-10 figure owners, whatever, right? I want to do that. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go into coaching because I've always been really good with people. I really care about helping people succeed. And I have a lot of these skills that I can use from my accounting and from building this first business, from creating the program, right? So I could do like a form of business coaching. So that was like my decision then. And a lot of stuff happened. So in August, I got eloped on the Oregon coast. So we were still living in Denver and we went to the Oregon coast because we already planned a little wedding. But then COVID happened. We're like, okay, we're not doing a wedding. We're just going to go because we don't know when it's going to end. So we went and got married on the coast. And then we were sitting there at a little Airbnb having our honeymoon. And like, why don't we live in a small house like this where you can have trees all around you and nature? And we just sat there and wrote out all of our things. We're like, we're calling in this house for this much, money. It's going to have this many rooms. It's going to be this close to town, blah, blah, blah. Like, we basically wrote it out together. And this was in August 2020. And by May 2021, we got a house here and we now live here in Pacific Northwest. So yeah, so that was a really cool manifestation.
Congratulations. And now is this house, if you don't mind me asking, pretty similar to the manifestation that you guys created?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Okay.
Some things that I would like to change. I can't change them because I live right next to a road and the road noise is pretty loud. So it's kind of weird. You're sitting here like in nature and trees and birds and stuff, and then you just hear not great, but it's all good. So it's probably not our forever home, but the fact that we're here is like amazing. That was another little manifestation because we kind of thought that maybe we would retire here someday, So retirement came 30, 40 years early, I guess.
Approximately how long after you left that last business to when did you start coaching?
About months. It was months, right? Because I was kind of still in that. The transition from employment to entrepreneurship was a tough one for me, Just, I'm glad you asked me a bit about my upbringing and stuff like that, because person listening, you could probably tell that I was taught from a very young age that things needed to be a very certain way, right? And up to about in my early 20s, things were a certain way, very much. Like they were very much intended. I was basically trying to make it to where my life was predictable. If you ask me in my early 20s, where am I going to be in 5-10 years? I could probably tell you with certainty. Like I'm going to be at this firm, doing this thing, traveling, maybe living in this town, but I was very determined and all of my manifestation always worked out somehow, right? Now, if you ask me where I'm going to be in 5-10 years, I can't tell you. And part of what I'm rewiring is the part of me that's freaking out about that, right? Because there's a part of me still from my past that's trying to get back to that consistency and let's be 100% sure, even though that's not even possible. I can't even guarantee tomorrow. Something could happen and boom, that's it. So my illusion of control was not, little did I know, was not actually real, but that's okay. That's part of the lesson.
Okay. And so you started your own business a couple months later.
Oh, right. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to say is I wouldn't let myself rest either because it's okay. That's done. Okay, now I got to start this. And of course, all people on the internet are saying like, oh, you can just make all your money in 90 days. You just need to have the right formula. And I invested in a lot of the got to have the right formula people, right? Because, it makes sense. If they have a playbook, then I want the playbook because I'm a person who plays by the rules. Unfortunately, there are no rules, but that's what the playbook says. But you got to pay, $5-10 to obtain that. Anyway, regardless, I enrolled in life coach school because I wanted to make sure that I had the proper skills to actually help people. That was very helpful. And, in life coach school or in any kind of certifications, they usually encourage you to work on your own stuff, right? What do you want to change in your life? Your first client is usually you, right? So it was very helpful. I already worked for the coach for a year, so I feel like I got a head start on a lot of that stuff. When it came down to helping me with a lot of these reoccurring challenges that I was having mindset-wise, there got to a point where traditional coaching was just not helping me anymore because I was so aware of what my problems were that it got to the point where it was like, well, that doesn't serve you. Yeah, I know. Okay, so you can choose to change it. And I'm like, yeah, I know I can choose to. Okay, so why don't you just do it? And I'm like, I don't know why, but I can't let it go. I've done the meditation. I've done whatever you wanted me to do, and it's still there. I don't know. I'm highly critical of myself. I still compare myself to people. I still have all of these patterns that are really hard to just let go. I'm still freaking out about money and how I'm not making it as fast as I wanted to because my brain was like desperately trying to cling back to my old life, And that's when I was like, there has to be something else out there that can help me. And that's when I found hypnosis, right? And like working with the subconscious, because it made perfect sense. It's, well, okay, when we're growing up, what happens is our brain, we have a certain brain wave that's happening, which is usually like the theta brainwave state. And that's the same state that your brain goes into when you're in hypnosis. So when you're in theta brainwave, you're a lot more suggestible. So, and children are automatically in that brainwave state. So it makes sense that when you're a child, you just kind of soak everything up. And also when you're a child, you don't have the ability to reason until a certain age. So when something happens, you usually make it mean something about you, right? You're not like, oh, that person had a bad day and they kind of project it on me, right? You just say, oh, that person yelled at me. That means that I'm bad or I'm not good enough or something like that. And so that's, I think, how a lot of these narratives get created, or beliefs, right? So I was kind of telling you that I was taught to compare myself a lot, my grades, right? And I was taught that I needed to be a certain way and to do a certain thing in society. So those were my subconscious programs that were like the foundation of how I needed to live my life in order to be okay, in order to be worthy, in order to be seen as a worthwhile human. And that might seem extreme, but that's how it actually was in my mind. So yeah. So I was like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. If you want to change these subconscious programs, you got to work with subconscious methods.
So how did the hypnosis start working for you? Was it successful?
Yeah, I mean, again, right? So just another layer of learning all of the stuff. Oh my God, it makes sense that up to age 7, 8 is when a lot of these programs get formed. Oh, where was I in those years? Russia. I'm like, that makes sense. And then, yeah, I began to use them and began to see results that I had never seen with some of these patterns that were really sticky. So what I didn't really like, though, eventually was that I needed to listen to an audio pretty much daily. And I was also just, I don't know, I was using hypnosis scripts a lot. And I was writing my own hypnosis scripts where I would be like working with my clients and creating custom ones for them, which was really cool. And they really enjoyed it. However, it would take me an 1.5 hour session with a client where I would get the information I needed to write the script, right? And then I would take 2 to 4 hours to write the script. And then it would take me another 1.5 hours, 2 hours to record it and edit it professionally and add the music and all that. So I'm like, okay, so I'm spending like 7 hours per client that I'm charging, I don't know, $200 for to do all this. It's not sustainable. And I know that there's other ways of does not require that. A lot of hypnotists actually don't condone scripts and all that kind of stuff. I use other methods, but like I knew that I wanted to do something different that didn't require me to do all that. Mm-hmm. So I started looking for other solutions. And again, I came across this company called Andreas NLP. And this company was created by Connie Ray and Steve Andreas, who in the early days, like in the 70s, were part of the pioneers of the neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP, movement and self-development. So Connie Ray, she's the one that created a method called core transformation, which is a parts work method. So it allows us to work with different aspects of ourselves and transform them on a subconscious level. So after I found that, it like, oh my gosh, it just clicked on so many different levels, First of all, I no longer needed to listen to audio tapes every day. And second of all, it just started really unlocking more of who I believe I truly am. Underneath all this conditioning, underneath all of these programs, more of my genuine essence. And I've never experienced that before until now.
Now, you said with the hypnosis, you experienced results like you had never seen before. What can you give us an example of maybe some result something you experienced?
Sure. Just, severe negative self-talk that was constantly running like a background loop in my brain. I tried my best to use what some coaches were like, you need to just tell yourself to stop and go do something else, change your mind, go, I don't know, go do something happy or like dance or something like that, which is really, it's good. I still use some of those things myself today for like an in the moment interruption. It's just not a very sustainable method because it requires willpower to use over time, and you have to keep repeating it over and over again. So for the first time, after listening to, really positive audio, transformational audio for 2 or 3 weeks, I began to, that soundtrack in my mind that was like always self-critical began to dissipate on its own. And I didn't have to do anything. And I was like, what is this? Why?
Okay.
So it started to automatically change certain reactions that I had to things or certain repeating thoughts that I had without me having to do anything. But I was doing something, right? I was listening to these, like I was putting myself into a very relaxed state, which I mentioned earlier, creates a suggestible environment for your subconscious. And then you're basically feeding your subconscious with a lot more positive affirmations, a lot more life-affirming words. So I am enough, like I love myself. I am capable. I can do this. I'm doing this. I'm doing really good. That is such a different soundtrack to what was before, when it was like, you're not doing this fast enough. You should be here. What did you do? Like, you should be going back to your old life. People are not, you want people to be proud of you. No one should be proud of you right now. Like, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Just a lot of ego-driven fear and lack. And it's really hard to change just by forcing yourself to stop thinking that way.
Yeah, no, it is. Okay. So now, this core transformation, how would you say it's similar to hypnosis?
I mean, there are some similarities in that it generally feels very relaxing to experience. However, it's not hypnosis. Well, there's different kinds of hypnosis. I think the line has been blurred about what is hypnosis and what is neurolinguistic programming and what is all this stuff. There's so many different forms and types that you can't say this is what it is and this is what it's not. All I can say is with hypnosis, there's generally an element of becoming relaxed. So practicing some kind of relaxation technique before you start either visualizing or feeding yourself affirmations, right? With core transformation, there's definitely elements of being relaxed, but it's not intentional. I normally start my sessions with a couple of deep breaths. That's not actually a part of the formal process. I just do that so we can arrive together. And then I just go ahead and start inviting my clients to bring up a situation where the pattern that they want to change last occurred. And we get into it. And before they know it, the body naturally goes into a very relaxed state, a very resourceful state. And they kind of go from there. And I guess there is a big similarity that it creates change on the subconscious level. So this is not like logical, conscious, oh, it makes sense. You are literally rewiring your subconscious mind to change your perception of life, because that's what reality is. It's perception. People are saying you create your own reality. To me, that means your perception creates your reality. Right? When you look outside and you see the sun, I see the sun right now. I say, oh, it's going to be a great day. It's sunny. I can wear my dress later. I'm excited for that. Somebody might look outside and say, that's terrible. I don't like the sun. It's too bright. I'm going to have a shitty day. So which one of us is correct? None of us is correct. It's however you choose to perceive it. Is what you'll get. I consciously chose right now to tell you that I'm excited, but sometimes you make unconscious choices that you're not consciously aware of, right? You might have a certain reaction to something, automatic reaction, right? And that just kind of happens. You don't choose to make that happen. Let's say that you did something right now that highly triggered me. I don't know what it would be, but let's say you said something really terrible about me. I would probably get really defensive right away. And it would just kind of be I wouldn't be like, okay, now I'm going to get defensive. It would just be like, oh, my gut is now weirdly, like I have tension in my body and I have heaviness in my chest. Why is that happening? Right? Because there's a subconscious program that got activated when you said something nasty to me. I didn't choose to make that happen. So in a way, we go through life with a lot of these like reactions that we're not aware of what's actually kicking them off. And what's kicking them off is these subconscious programs that we have that we may or may not be consciously aware of.
Wow. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. That's true, though, that our perception really dictates our reality based on what we're... Okay. Now, I'll say that, too, that during our session, I felt relaxed, but I don't... Like, you didn't guide me through a meditation. You didn't... Like, even as breathwork, when I facilitate breathwork, I tried to facilitate starting it with relaxation. And now I can tell that I felt it, but it didn't seem like you were doing it intentionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think just the nature of the process helps your body relax, because what we do in the process is we find a part of you that you'd like to change. So like a feeling or a behavior or thought that you'd like to change. And then the nature of the questions, when we start talking to that part of you, I think it naturally slows down your breathing. It relaxes your nervous system. It naturally puts you into a relaxed state because you're going into deeper layers of yourself. And when you also turn inward, there's like this, there's just a relaxation that happens naturally. So yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So now this core transformation, how did you first discover this?
It was one of those like paying attention to signals of the universe thing. Like I started seeing a bunch of people on my Facebook feed start posting about something called like eye movement integration or something. And they were like, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what is this? And I started Googling it and I tied it back to Andreas NLP. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this company, this is interesting. And then I was listening to a random lecture. This was like this was all happening within a few weeks of each other, right? I was listening to a random lecture about self-confidence from some hypnosis conference or something. And he was like, by the way, everything I'm talking about in this lecture is from Connie Ray's book, Core Transformation or like Wholeness or something. And you can find more information on Andreas NLP. I'm like, okay. So it pointed me back to that website again. And then I went on the website finally and I reached out to them and I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm a transformational coach. I want to have better results with my clients. I'm currently doing hypnosis and coaching. And they wrote back and they were like, yeah, core transformation would be a really great place to start exploring your journey. So I signed on to their foundation course for the core transformation method. I started going through it and I was like, wait a minute, this sounds really familiar. And I went back to look at my coach certification notes, and there was a whole section in there where we actually learned part of the method. This was back 3 years ago, and at the top of my notes in the coach certification, it said like, special thanks to Connie Ray Andreas for this contribution. I'm like, what? It's like a full circle thing. So, like when you have so many confirmations like that, you kind of pay attention.
Okay. There definitely seems like there were synchronicities there for you.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. That's so cool. So what would you say this core transformation has helped you personally with the most?
Oh my gosh, so much stuff. I would say my biggest win up to now, I kind of mentioned negative self-talk earlier. Part of my negative self-talk was just this constant feeling of it's like constant self-doubt and not feeling good enough. I would freak out so much before all of my client calls. I'd be okay, I'd show up effectively and help them and stuff. But beforehand, I would always be in this nervousness and what if they don't like me, or what if I say something bad, or what if I don't get it right, or what if they can't have results. And I think it came from a place of really wanting to succeed, because so much of my life I was successful with living that traditional life. And it was part of my brain trying to go back to that. Let's be successful again. Let's be good. Let's have society like you and accept you. Let the grade book be full of A's, right? So I think that's where it came from. But it was a very persistent thing. And that is one pattern that I had been working on for, I would say, a long time with hypnosis, and it helped to a degree, but it was still there. And then when I started working on it with core transformation and started approaching various aspects of it, it really helped. And most recently, I actually was able to see the results of it in action, because I was having a discovery call with somebody and they were straight up like, they said things that used to send me into panic. It's nothing about you. I'm sure you're a great person, but I'm concerned that you haven't been doing this for very long, and I don't know if this is going to work for me. Because they were coming from a place of just being burned by a bunch of coaches. And they were nervous to make the investment, right? Because they're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. And I want you to guarantee things. And I want you to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't guarantee anything. If someone's guaranteeing you things, they should probably be wary of that. Like, I noticed myself approaching that question instead of fear and panic, which used to happen automatically. I was like, oh, yeah, compassion. Like, I get it. I also had been burned. I know what you're experiencing. And yeah, you're right. I'm not a coach that has decades of experience yet, but I will tell you, I'm confident in what I do. I have done hundreds of sessions on myself and hundreds of sessions on clients. I'm at the top of my class in my trainings. I'm also a mentor for this method in the trainings. So like, I'm confident that this method works and that I am an effective guide. And like, just saying that from a place of not being rehearsed and no fear or panic is like, I got off that phone call and I was like, oh my God, it's like the transformation, it's happened. Which is like a great convincer for me, right, of the effectiveness of my work. I was like, oh, these things that have been so hard to change have finally begun to significantly shift, So that is one big aspect that it's helped me with. And then I just kind of use it for, everything. Like, I had a diet thing that I needed to do earlier this year. My doctor suggested that I go dairy, gluten, and like oat and beef free for like months. I was fine in the office, and then I went home and I like freaked out. I was like, no. There was parts of me that were like, you're going to lose all your freedom and life is never going to be good again. And it was very dramatic. But I get it. I've never done something like that before, and it was hard. And I worked on these parts of myself that were freaking out, that were really concerned with my ability to choose and my freedom and stuff like that. And because I was noticing behaviors that I didn't like, like my husband would be like sitting there eating like a cheese sandwich or something. And I'd be like, oh, well, must be nice. You get to do these things and I don't get to do that. I'm sitting there being all bitter and like bitchy and stuff. And I'm noticing myself talking like that. And I'm like, I don't want to be that person,
Yep.
So anyway, I worked on these parts of myself and I noticed significant shifts in like my just reaction to the whole thing. It's no, this is a choice. It's for my health and well-being, and I'm okay. You can eat your cheese sandwich and then it doesn't have to affect my internal, well-being. How can the external circumstances not dictate your internal state? Which is, as a human being, I think that's why we're here, right? Is to experience a lot of these external things so we can learn lessons. And I think the lesson is, how can you flow through life? What do you need to learn through these experiences? For me, it's how do I create internal peace regardless of what's happening out there? So all of these disruptions in my life that happened in the last 4 years of like, how do you deal with your financial situation completely being flipped on its head? How do you deal with knowing exactly what you're going to be doing, thinking you're going to know anyway, in the next 5 years, and then not knowing. How do you deal with having a decade-long career where you thought you were at the top and you knew all these things, to being a complete beginner again? How do you deal with, how do you keep a sound emotional state while all this is happening? Because, I guess you could say I chose to do all those things, right? I chose to go into the entrepreneurship path. I could have just gone to go get a job in the accounting firm. Sometimes it doesn't seem like you get to choose, right? Like sometimes something happens with your partner of a long time. Sometimes something happens really shitty with your financial situation that you don't think you had the power to control. Sometimes you have something health-wise that happens, or something in your family or your friend circle that affects your life profoundly. And like, how do we have these things happen and still be in a state of okayness? Let's not even say like joy or like bliss or ecstasy, but like okayness, and not go into a deep, dark hole or spiral into depression or anxiety or fear or hopelessness, especially with the way that the world is now.
Yeah, I like the word you used there, okayness. It's so true though. Like, how can we have these external things that are gonna come up, like you mentioned, whether it's finances, whether it's health? Like, I got laid off from my job, my typical 9 to 5 over a year ago. Like, these things happen that we don't anticipate that will happen,
Yeah.
And how do you handle that without it affecting the internal? I love that question.
Yeah. Well, and I shouldn't say not affect at all, because I think it's normal for us to have reactions to things, and especially traumatic reactions or situations. But like, how can we not let it drag on for months and years and stuff like that, right? I think it's totally normal to be disappointed or scared or anxious or stressed or whatever. And is it a constant way of being for you, or is it just something that's temporary? And if it's a constant way of being, is that the kind of life that you want to live? And just knowing that there are tools out there that can actually help you if you do have ongoing stuff like that. Because for me, I didn't want to be in a chronic state of self-doubt. It created a lot of stress for me. It made this whole entrepreneurship journey not very fun. It made me snark at people who were like, it's fun, just, you got to stay resilient and find the fun in things. And it's, no, I'm not having any fun. I'm not making any money. I'm not having sex. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, the old Alina was like, she was looking at something, she was looking at it through a lens of something that it's actually not. So, and really, from my perspective, one of the best ways, there's a lot of ways, but one of the best ways to change those lenses is through subconscious change work. And for me, core transformation just happens to be the method that I love to use. It's not for everybody, but for me, there are so many connections from this method that are not just, it's not just about, oh, let's change your self-confidence. Sure, that's great. There's also a deeper why here for me. When we do the core transformation method, these parts of ourselves that we work with, we ask them what they want. Basically, it's the first part of the process. And what all of these parts want, first of all, it's something positive that they want at a deeper level for you, even what they want at the surface level is not very positive. If they want to be angry or something like that, might not be quote unquote positive, but they want something through that anger that is positive. And actually, at the deepest core level, hence the core and core transformation, they want something that is actually a state of being. And it's a state of being that you can have regardless of your circumstances in your life, and regardless of people, and regardless of yourself. So it's literally just a state of being. And this process guides these parts to those states of being. And they usually, this is not like a mental, logical concept. You actually get to experience this in the body. And it's these states, ones that I experience often, or like connection to source, or wholeness or love that just is, or peace or tranquility, or even like joy or bliss or ecstasy. It's like these profound states, and it's usually a felt experience in the body. And this is part of a big reason why there's a shift that creates on the subconscious level, because our subconscious communicates through images, sounds, and feelings. That's part of its language. And so when you experience that deep, profound state of being in the body, and then you kind of, from that state, take a look at your old problem, right? You can begin to naturally sense a perspective shift. And like we were talking about before, perception is reality. So if you can, you're basically transforming your reality. You're rewiring your subconscious with these states of being naturally. And to me, I mean, I'm into all sorts of mystical things, but I'm also a student of Taoism. And Taoism is a little bit, in some ways, connected to Buddhism sometimes. So I'll take a peek of that stuff too. And just not a lot of like Eastern philosophies or religions or whatever. There's these, they talk about, the ego, and they talk about who we really are beneath all this stuff, like beneath our ego, beneath our conditioning, and how spirit resides in the subconscious. And it's a connection. It's a way for us to connect spiritually. It's a way for us to connect with our higher selves. And so that's really my deeper why, because I feel like it's helping me uncover my true, like I mentioned earlier, uncover who I really am, like be the authentic expression of my soul on planet Earth. And you don't get there through a logical concept. You don't get there by saying, I am. I mean, you could, but for most people, there's a lot of conditioning that holds them back from being that expression. And I also believe that more people, I wish more people were in their full expression, because there's currently a lot of ways of doing things, like ways of doing business, ways of running our economies that are destroying the planet, and they're harming human beings, they're harming living beings. I would love for humanity to continue, for us to have a thriving world for all. So that's, I would say it's my deeper why, is like helping people clear these distortions of reality from their space, these programs that are keeping them in frequencies of lack, fear, and control, so that they can actually be their true selves that the world needs them to be, so it can be a better place for all of us.
So, I think even when you mentioned about all the I ams, it kind of ties back into the willpower, because even with I am, you got to have the willpower to be saying that.
Right.
In the moment, if you really don't believe it, what's going to make you just start saying those affirmations in the mirror? You're just not going to do it. You
will, but it won't be lasting. Most people will not do it for long enough that they need to be doing it in order for it to actually effectively rewire the brain, because it does work, but the amount of times that you have to do it, for most people, let's say, I used to tell my clients that in order for you, and this is from scientific studies, right? Like in order for you to change a pattern in your mind with repetition and stuff like that, you got to do it for 67 days or something like that. On average, there's different people. They're like 21 days, 30 days, whatever, but anywhere between 20 and 90 days. So this is for methods that require willpower. I mean, hypnosis is not really willpower. I mean, you just kind of sit there and listen. But I think it works really well for some people. Like people who are more suggestible maybe work better with hypnosis. So it just depends on who it is. That's why I'm like, everything is included. It's not that I'm poo-pooing on hypnosis. It's just that I found a method that works better for me, that works more effectively and faster. And I personally did not enjoy continuing to listen to audios. Some people love it. Some people are like, I love having something positive to listen to every day. Great.
Now, I want to backtrack a tad, because you had mentioned, and I noticed we did this in my session, but you asking, like, what does the part want? what does doing that help with the most? Like asking what it wants.
Right, because the whole principle of this process is that we have all these behaviors and feelings and thoughts for a reason, right? So because all these different parts of us that want to do that behavior, they're trying to fulfill a need or a desire, right? They're not just doing it because. And usually the reason why I say that all of our parts have a positive purpose is because a lot of them were formed in our formative years in our childhood. And a lot of them exist for reasons of protection and for you to be a part of something, to belong, to be loved, to be cared for, to be in peace, to be safe, right? So that's why a lot of these behaviors are happening. And actually, when you start to look at the world like that, it helped me have a lot more compassion for people. Because it's like, why is this person this way? Well, it's because they're trying to achieve something just in a very ineffective way. You know, maybe a part of somebody who acts up and gets very loud and angry or something like that, like very reactive, be loved. Maybe that part of them wants belonging or wants, I don't know what it wants at the core level. Those are all different, but that's really what the deeper purpose is for that action. It's not so that they're just an evil person and they're an asshole. I think for most people, they're trying to achieve something. And so when we ask the part, what do you want? It can let us know what it wants we start off at the surface level, right? So what do you want through this behavior of getting reactive? I want to be heard. Okay, great. Thanks for letting us know. And then what we do, so in the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real and imaginary. You've probably heard of athletes using visualization to help them be better at their craft, at their sport. So they might envision, I don't know, just imagine themselves like throwing three free throws or swimming faster or their muscles working a certain way. And lo and behold, this actually helps them in real life. So when the part tells us what it wants, and let's say in our example, the part wanted to be heard, right? We then invite this part to step or breathe into what it's like to already have this, what it would be like in the imagination, right? And so then the part can actually experience what it's like to be heard. And it can have that in imagination, aka in reality, right? So then we can ask it, okay, so when you have being heard, what do you want that's even deeper or more important through having this? And so it kind of goes into these deeper layers of, and it's not logical. Right now, me and you are, eyes awake and all that stuff, but usually the subconscious mind answers what it wants. And sometimes the answers are logical. You might say, oh, through being heard, I want to belong, or I want to be safe. And that might kind of make sense, but sometimes it doesn't. And so we just say, great, thank you for letting us know. And I'll invite you to step into what it's like to be safe, right? So that the part can basically have what it wants, experience what it's like to already have it, and then learn what it actually wants that's deeper and what it wants at the core level, because that's the whole point, is once it reaches the core level, the part realizes that it actually never needed to do any of these things first. Like it never needed to be angry in the first place, to be heard. It never needed it to be protected or loved, because at the core level, all of these things are usually, they come naturally. When you're at the core state, you no longer have a lot of these like egoic desires to be accepted, or I don't know, it just doesn't matter anymore. And it's so hard to explain as like a mental concept. This is why it's such an experiential process. But I don't know. I'd be interested. I don't know if you remember from your session how it was for you, because I think you maybe were working on your reaction to a certain person that used to trigger you, and then you reached a core state. Like, what was your experience?
So I didn't expect that the part wanted what it wanted, honestly. I was defensive over an old coworker of mine, like not thinking I knew what I was doing, basically. And ultimately it came down to me wanting to be valued at the company and me wanting to be seen and me wanting to be heard in general. I did not realize that it was that at all until we kept asking it. Like, it didn't come up right away either.
And then when you reached the core state, which I don't remember what it was for you, but do you remember when you were in the core state and I was inviting you to kind of look at all of these things that you said before the core state, like the being heard and seen and whatever? Do you remember that process?
Yeah, I just felt bliss.
Yeah.
Like, most simply put, not agitated, which is really what I felt previously. Thinking about the environment, the interaction, I would get this agitated type feeling in my body, but I felt such a chill, like ease almost, you know?
In the process, you can have that perception shift of, oh, actually, there's no need to be reactive here, and I can relax around this person because this person does not dictate my internal state, because I have the ability to step into this really resourceful way of being just by thinking about it, right? Remembering how it was for me to experience it in the session. And when you work with it, because this work is really best when we only did one session, but this work is really powerful when you do it over time, multiple times on different parts and stuff, because a big part of self-development, it really relies on repetition. Like, you have to kind of force yourself into these like resourceful states. Okay, think of confidence. Okay, good. Now you feel confident. Great. But like for this, if you work with enough parts, you notice an ongoing change in how you are in the world. It's hard to explain. I'm just, I think I was always a pretty chill person, but I feel like I'm even more chill now. It's so much easier for me to be in compassion instead of reactivity. It's so much easier for me to be in presence, to get into states of relaxation. I'm just a different person. This ongoing unease that I had in the past about, I don't know, my current situation of the business that I'm building and like how it's going and all this stuff, right? Because in the past, there just used to be a lot of self-criticism, and that would just cause an automatic, ongoing sense of unease. It was like my body was always tight. Like you can't relax until you succeed. Do you know how long it takes to build a successful business? The gurus will not talk about that, but it's going and it's doing well. Like I'm getting clients and stuff like that, and I'm not where I want to be yet financially, but it's on its way, right? And it, as you can, from all these amazing questions you asked me, it's been a journey, right? This is year 4 for me in August of entrepreneurship in general, and there's been so many renditions of who I was. It's like business coach to hypnotist to now only this, what am I doing, right? It takes a while to find your groove and to restart a career and to change your identity. It's not sustainable if you are constantly doing it from a state of lack, fear, worry, and control. It takes a toll on your physical body. A lot of people get sick, burnt out, and it's just not, you're not a fun person to be around when you're in constant stress. So I knew I wanted to change that because I'm playing the long game. I'm serious about my career. I'm serious about building mastery in these skills and creating a really great business out of it and serving a lot of people. That's going to take time. So in the meantime, how can I affect my internal state to be as present, calm, and resourceful as possible? That's my goal. I think a lot of people are probably in those similar situations, especially if they're building a business.
I gotcha. I really like how you said you went from a business coach to a hypnotist, just because it really highlights, and I don't think a lot of people talk about it enough. We all go through so many pivots. It's normal. It's a part of life, you know? Just because you started your own business doing X doesn't mean that's what your business is still going to be. Mm-hmm. I just really love that you said that, because I don't think enough people even mention that, to be honest. You start fitness coaching, for example, and then you realize it's life coaching you want to do. it happens to so many of us because you don't know how you are going to like something, how it's going to be until you experience it.
Totally. And I agree with you that it's normal. And yet for somebody like me who used to think that there was just one path, that...
No, so did I. So that's even also why I really wanted to highlight that, because I'm like, I know my listeners relate to that because I was on the steady trajectory. You go to school, you're going to be a paralegal. Now, I ask a lot of guests, and it kind of made me think of this now. Have you had a moment? A lot of people have had a few, but would you say you've had a big aha moment in your life when you realized something big, something different about the world that shaped your reality?
The last 4 years, I feel like, have been a giant aha moment in general. I mean, I've already shared multiples of these on the show today, but learning about the subconscious mind and how a big reason of why we are the way we are has been a giant revelation for me, because it basically says that I am not... There's a lot of room for change, and there's a lot of room for expansion beyond the confines of what we think is reality. Like, just the question of what is reality it's a big revelation, because I don't think there's a correct answer there. And once you start diving into these rabbit holes of uncovering some of these layers of conditioning, I mean, there's a lot there to discover, and a lot of ahas that come just from that, of, oh, hey, that's not actually how the world really is, and everything that I thought needed to be a certain way actually doesn't, and what else is possible? And so that's a big question.
That's true. That's true. What else is possible? I love that. Now, do you have a favorite thing or experience that has happened with any of your clients throughout a core transformation, either session or journey with you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I have a client who I've been working with for quite a while, actually, and it's just been really cool to see his progression in general. He is somebody who really values stripping a lot of these layers and discovering new aspects of himself. He just made a decision that is really going to change his life. And a big part of that is working with a lot of these parts that are fearful and basically say that he can't do it and he's going to fail and all these things. That's been really rewarding to watch somebody do really hard, challenging things that I know are going to stretch him for the better. I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be all easy, but he's not going to regret this decision later on in life, probably. Can't speak for everybody, but he probably will not, according to what he told me anyway, because everything that he decides, he does himself, and I don't tell him to do anything. And yeah, just watching countless people go into these states and then be like, I've never experienced something like that before. I never thought about it that way before. Or there's a portion of the process where I tell people that they can either nod or just give me a short verbal answer, because sometimes it's just easier to stay inside. And I usually nod because I don't have the words to describe what I'm experiencing. But I enjoy the people who choose to give me verbal answers, because it's almost like I get to sit there and experience sages. You know, it's all my clients become sages, and they have all this incredible wisdom that comes out when they are experiencing these core states of being. Just the most amazing stuff like comes out of their mouth. I'm like, I never thought about it that way too. That's cool. I don't reply like that. I'm silent, but it's cool to hear people's revelations about reality and their perceptions of life. And yeah, so it's a constant aha for me.
That's awesome. I love that. And I love that story about your client you've worked with for a while, because, I mean, you mentioned this decision he made. It's not going to be easy, but that made me think of even the entrepreneurship journey. It's not easy, but like in the grand scheme of it, he'll be grateful, and this helped him be able to take that leap.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome. I love that. I love that. So, have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
Yes.
Big fan. So, he's got a podcast called On Purpose, and he ends most of his episodes with 2 segments, and I stole them. So, I asked them on my podcast. The first segment is called The Many Sides to Us. There's 5 questions, and they need to be answered in 1 word each.
Ooh.
One. What is 1 word someone who was meeting you for the first time would use to describe you?
Chill.
Number 2. What is 1 word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you?
Caring.
Number 3. What is 1 word you'd use to describe yourself? Number 4. What is 1 word that if someone didn't like you or agree with your mindset would use to describe you?
Crazy? I don't know.
Number 5. What is 1 word you're embodying right now?
Present.
Okay. Then the second segment is the final 5, and these can be answered in a sentence. What is the best advice you've heard or received?
Maybe one of the best pieces of advice came from my spiritual mentor, that she was sharing with me, how there's 2 different ways of looking at things. There's like the micro view. So what is happening right in front of you, like right now, right? Me and you are having this conversation on StreamYard, whatever. And there's a macro view, which is the expanded, larger view, which neither of us is actually fully aware of what's truly happening. So this conversation here, I've been enjoying it. My perception of it is right. And me and you have no idea the impact that this is actually creating in the world. So we don't know who's going to listen to this. We don't know how it's going to impact their life. And me and you are actually in a certain energetic frequency right now too. And we don't know how that is affecting the planet fully. So just whenever you have any kind of situation, really, it's always helpful to remember that it's usually not whatever you think it is, because you have no idea what the full ramification of whatever your experience is, right? So that's kind of like why there's a lot of Chinese sage stories that talk about the power of maybe, right? It's, oh, that's amazing. And it's maybe, oh, that's really bad. Maybe, right? Because you don't know. Sure, like from the minimal, I don't know, closed-in perspective, it could be one or the other, but really you don't know what it is. Because even something really terrible happening, yes, it's terrible that maybe some people passed away or something like that, right? Or got killed. And you also don't know how that could be affecting other people around, maybe that witnessed this. Maybe they are now closer to people than they've ever been. Maybe there's community that has come together and rekindled something. Maybe there is a frequency of love that got awakened that was never there before. We don't really know. So it's really hard to label things as good or bad, or right or wrong, or, polarities.
Okay. I like that. Okay. Number 2. What is the worst advice you've heard or received?
That there is a certain way of doing things, or that, or that it's good or bad or right or wrong, probably, because it keeps people in limited mindsets, right? That there is just one way or one specific box that you have to shove yourself into.
No, I completely agree. That is honestly something I try to emphasize so much so on the podcast about everything. Anything you want to do in life. There is 5,000 ways to do it. You want to get a 6-pack? You can get a 6-pack a different way than Joe Schmo down the street got his 6-pack. You want to become an entrepreneur? You can do it a different way than Joe Schmo down the street. There are 1,000 ways to do every and anything you want to do. Completely agree. Number 3. what is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Oh my gosh. Well, did you listen to the podcast? Because I feel like we just talked about all that. You know, in summary, I used to really value a predictable way of life. I used to really value what I thought I had control over, having a certain amount of finances coming in a consistent way or something like that. And I would usually make decisions based on that. Is it going to be consistent? Is it going to be predictable? So that was a big part of my value system. So safety and predictability was a big part of my value system. And while it still is to a degree, I mean, I am a human being, I much value growth, spiritual growth, expansion, and learning and service that goes beyond.
If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be as if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
She had the courage and ability to step into who she truly is, and therefore helped other people do the same. And therefore the earth was a better place because of it.
That's beautiful. Okay. If you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know why.
That's a cool question. That goes against all my Taoist stuff. Let's see. Worst thing that came was like, you know, there is no rules. But I don't really like that because that goes into another deep rabbit hole. Because there are some great rules that exist to keep society somewhat safe. Gosh. Question everything, perhaps, would be a great law. And, you know, why? It might help you see things in a different way, and it might help you have a totally, completely different experience of life in a positive way, in a resourceful way. Because when we get stuck in these ideas that, again, things need to be a certain way, right? It can create a lot of suffering. Expectations can create suffering. Other people's ideas of what's true can create suffering. So if you question everything, and I mean in a healthy way, not like a doubt yourself or whatever, but just a playful, curious way of questioning. I wonder if that's true. I wonder if that can be somehow expanded, or I wonder if that can be thought of in a different way or done in a different way. I wonder if this is who I really am, or if this is just who I've learned to be, or someone imposed this on me. I wonder if this feeling is mine. I wonder if this, you know, it's like a curious way of being that continuously expands your perspective of life and creates so much more freedom and, to me, joy and like satisfaction, fulfillment.
Okay. And now, where can the listeners connect with you? And are they able to do a core transformation session with you?
Absolutely. So people can find me on my website at alinanikishina.com. And also, I'm primarily on Instagram at HeyAlinaN or LinkedIn. And yeah, I offer single sessions, and I also offer packages for core transformation. And you can read about it more on my website.
Okay, awesome. And I will link that in the show notes so you guys can click it directly. And before we close out, is there any final words you want to leave the listeners with? No pressure. I do just like to leave the floor to the guest.
Yeah, thank you. I actually did want to add that I also have a weekly newsletter that I create called Subconscious Success Sunday. And folks who sign up, they can learn a lot of different tools and like methods and just tips and tricks about our subconscious mind and how we can work with it. So I'd sign up for that. I'm celebrating that I've been writing it weekly now for over 64 weeks. So officially over a year. Yeah. But besides that, I want to leave the listener with just some parting words of that if you are in any kind of perpetual state of being that you don't like, so, you're noticing that you're just constantly in this even low grade unease or anxiety or stress, and, you may or may not know why it's happening, but I want you to know that there are ways of transforming those things in a way that's gentle, in a way that doesn't require you to dig up traumas from the past or doesn't require you to necessarily feel it to heal it, which I don't agree with that completely all the time. Basically, if you have been trying something and it's just not been working, I would invite you to check out something like Core Transformation, because it really is a gentle process that allows you to heal on a deep level in a way that you probably never experienced before. And you can read a lot about it on coretransformation.org. There's the Andreas NLP website. And of course, I'm happy to chat with you about it as well. I give complimentary discovery calls.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you speaking with me. And I will link all of that in the show notes so you guys can connect with Alina directly. And thank you so much again.
Thank you, Amanda.
And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Amanda's Mindset.